Hello and welcome to this episode of Timeless Topics. This is part 2 in a 3-part series on how we cultivate hope and honor our shared humanity through those moments of connection, whether they're at a conference, during a class, or in a conversation. In this episode, we discuss everything from Pollyanna thinking, humility, and role modeling to intersectionality and quilting. Yes, you heard me right, quilting. Stick with us as we share this longer form discussion with an added dose of spice. We're so excited you're back with us for part 2. Let's go ahead and jump right back into the conversation.
How do we teach this?
Oh,
Because some of these conversations that we've had over the last several weeks, right? Some of this, I think, boils down to who someone is as an individual, as a human being, right? Which stems from the environment they were raised in, the ethics and morals that they were raised around, right? And the way that they were brought up, right? As my grandmother would say, whether or not they have any home training. So by the time that we get them,
yeah.
when they're in graduate education, when they've graduated from nursing school, they are young adults,
Yeah.
right? A lot of this has been instilled in them. How do we teach some of this without being seen as a Pollyanna and rose-colored glasses and that's just ridiculous. That's not the way the world works. I think a lot about the just the concept of, I need to step over everybody else so that I can win. I need to be on top. How do we how do we how do we talk about that?
I think it starts with humility, right? I think a lot of medicine is built on hubris. Being the IV queen, being the neonatologist that can intubate a rutabaga. Like, there's just this whole thing, right, about technical skill that then bleeds over into ego, right? And we have this idea, and then the natural hierarchy of the way medicine is organized, whether it's, a provider type clinician at the top and then everybody below them, or the patient is at the bottom, even though they're supposed to be in the middle. They've always been in the middle, but we never actually have them in the middle, right? But if you can teach people humility and the ability to question their own stance on things, I think we could teach a lot more with those solid foundational skills. Because like when we teach trauma-informed care and implicit bias and things like that to my group of new grads and new to specialty nurses, we also ground it in the socio-ecological model to talk about how everybody is influenced by all of these fears. Some you're cognitively aware of and can name, like they're your grandma. And then some are just the neighborhood you happen to be born in, the state that you live in, the government that is happening at the time, the school you go to. And those things are a little bit less tangible. But you don't realize that even if you don't play an active role in it, maybe you don't participate in the sports or participate in the religion, you're still influenced by the environment that is influenced by those things. And so trying to get people to pull back from their gut instinct of, well, what I know is right, and instead say, well, what I know is my experience, but I'd love for you to tell me more about yours. Because then together you can start putting together this idea that perhaps we're not meant to be rugged individuals and only see the world through one lens. That we're actually supposed to be this patchwork quilt that everybody gets to bring their little squares to. And in the end, we have something loving and that protects us and shields us, but we have to participate. And if we wall ourselves off, right, and say that, oh, I don't have that religion, so I'm not going to talk to you, or I don't go to that school, so I'm not going to talk to you, you're missing out on how much cooler your pattern for your quilt could be, right? And I think that's a bigger problem that we have in the greater culture is we've gotten so far that every single subject is an us versus them that you forget that it's really not that simple. And to make it that simple is a disservice to everybody.
Mhm. What's interesting is, I'm sitting here, having this conversation with you guys and realizing that we all are educators, in our own way, in our own specialty. And I think a lot of this does fall on educators, hopefully being able to, you know, realize that it's not bad to look through rose-colored glasses. I know we generally tend to have a negative bias, just the way we're programmed for survival and all that other kind of stuff. But in order for there to be a downside, there has to be an upside, right? I mean, there is no dark without light and, good without bad and stuff like that. And I think the invitation for us as educators is to see that, but also see like the patchwork in between, right? That there's a continuum of what that looks like. And for us to begin to role model, because we do have, um, positions of power, and I'm going to use air quotes here because it's not the evil power, but the power to, fan the flames of passion in a young nurse's heart and soul to really realize that, kind of what you were saying earlier, it can be scary for me as a new nurse. And have you as an educator, or have you as a team or nurse manager, or whoever the people are, have you created an environment that helps me feel safe? That whole idea of psychological safety and feeling like I belong. Or do I just need to figure out how to fit in for the next how many years I decide to stay in this environment, which in and of itself is going to kind of put a wedge and distance me from wanting to stay in this place because it's just too stressful to try and stay. So I think, you know, one of the thoughts came into my head is like somebody has to be the grown up in the room, right? Somebody has to be the wise grandma in the space and shine the light, and in small ways though, because you can't shift everybody, unfortunately, sadly. There's always going to be grouchy Gerties and, you know, I won't say, but those other folks, but as an educator, realizing what the responsibility is for us to empower these new professionals, and even the ones that we're not directly responsible for, right? Because everybody's always watching. That's the cool thing I think about being a role model is you're a role model all the time. Sometimes you're playing the role, you're doing it on purpose, but other times you're just kind of like, floating along, and people are going, I just saw Mary do that. What? And so it is a little bit stressful, but it also, in that stress, it compels me to be more mindful. Have I got it nailed? No way. But I know I am more mindful of how I'm showing up now than I was in the past, for sure. Do you know what I mean? Like it is all these different moving parts. But don't let go of your Pollyanna, Tracy. Keep looking through those rose-colored glasses, because you're seeing the good that is there. It's just really helping other folks say, hey, here, put these glasses on. You're missing the whole point here.
And it just the potential. I think we're so quick to say it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way, it's only going to be worse. That negativity bias, like you said. And look, no one will ever accuse me of being an optimist, right? Anybody who knows me enough knows that that is just not how I roll, right? I am a very strong realist. I will assess the situation based on available data and past experience and run it through my analytical trauma brain, right? But I will always find a place of hope because hope is always there.
Yeah.
It's just how much work you have to do to cultivate it and to get it into action and move it from a place of an ideal to an action-based concept. So sure, it's cheap to call it Pollyanna, right? Like, because that just implies that, oh, it'll never happen. Oh, yeah, okay, and then pigs will fly, right? But really and truly, we're capable of this.
Yeah.
It's just going to take a little bit of work, right? And in some cases, a lot of bit of work in order to get there. But that should always be the ideal.
Yeah.
It's like, even I know this is a spicy topic to bring up, but like even when people think about the concept of like DEI, like you're never really done with that kind of work. Like there's always someone who needs to be centered and amplified and supported in an equitable way. So if you think you are, you're just sorely mistaken, right? Like these are big lifelong endeavors that the goal is to get to this place that everybody feels those things. But it starts with somebody believing that it's even possible. Because if we can never get past there, then the world's never going to be any better.
Right. Right.
Well, I just worry that people are so tired,
Yeah.
right? And everyone is just exhausted. And I think about this concept of you're talking, Mary, being a role model, even when you're not intending to be a role model. And that to me, what I hear out of that is, oh man, I'm always on, right? Like I always have to be on because you don't want to let down that guard. Like I said, I started a new position this weekend, And I am exhausted because I did have to put on this sense of, even though I was having a great time, lovely, lovely people, I did have a great time, but there's still this sense of they don't know me. So I can't be who I am after midnight, right? Like I can't turn into the gremlin. So no chocolate after this time because I know what's gonna happen. So I just have to, because
Mhm.
they're just meeting me.
Yeah.
And it's just this sense, right? And I think, and taking your words, Jessi, spicy here, right? I think that when you think about the term, which people like it or not like it, I just put it out there, the minority tax, right?
Mhm.
And the fact that when you are the underrepresented, whatever population, you have this sense of I have to be here at all times. I can't let my guard down. I can't be whatever because I am the only one of me. I am the N of one. And so everyone else around me is looking at me, trying to see, is this N of one going to um, demonstrate the stereotypes that we think about for that particular population, right? And is some of that this sense of I am so heightened to there being a fire. I think there's a fire when there's not really a fire.
Yeah.
Right? And is that just part of, again, being that N of one so often? And are people really looking? They're probably not sometimes. They're probably trying to make sure that they're on point. But that N of one is always thinking somebody is watching me. And
Yeah.
so I never quite know how to balance that. How do you balance this sense of I have to be me? I know that I'm good enough. I know that I'm qualified. I know that I'm supposed to be here, even though no one else here looks like me, thinks like me, whatever, thinks that I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Versus, are they really looking at me thinking I'm not supposed to be here? Or is that just all in my head? And I never quite know how to balance that.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody's got that nailed either, Tracy. I think what you're calling out is just the messiness of what it is to be human. And when you said that thing about like always being on, and so I'm always performing, you made me think about that fitting in piece. And I was trying to think in my head, like, so how do you get that performative piece, right? For safety and for all the reasons that you described. Um, how do you get that person or that being back in line with the you, that is wonderful and caring and compassionate and all that kind of stuff. And in the middle of that navigational journey, I think is the disentangling of all of that, the systemic trauma, the biases and all of those things that help you always, that's not a help actually, that compel you to always be in that place of defense because of the way your system, your stress response system has been programmed for safety and survival. And so yeah, I mean, I don't think the experience of that is ever going to be the same between any two people, even two people of the same, color. I think it's always going, just because no two people are the same. And I think that is also a place that can wreak havoc in our heads and our hearts, but also is an opportunity for us to just like drop the rock, and just really try and make the connections. I say that it's way easier for me to say those words than for it to actually happen. But again, I think that's another opportunity or invitation for us, at least as role models and educators, to begin to navigate that and find that place that feels safe but doesn't feel as burdensome. Like the first few times, it's going to feel wicked burdensome, but then as you begin to, kind of, emanate the love and the relationship and the connectedness that's inside you out, and you begin to feel more confident, I think that begins to happen. Although there are just some environments that are just straight up toxic, and that's like, get on the next bus and get the heck out of here kind of a thing. But that's a really good challenging uh situation, I think that we all have to navigate.
Yeah, two things came to mind. So one, this is when we really have to understand that the individual cannot be expected to change the system by themselves. Like you need to build, community needs to be built so that other people can pick up this load of changing people's minds and decreasing stereotypes and dismantling biases and systems that are upheld by oppression and all of those things, right? Because at least under, US American culture, it's always been very, well, they got to teach us, right? When it's really like, it's much more, the ownership is not on any one group of person, and it's definitely not on anyone who would be considered the oppressed in any equation that you want to look at this in. And so it's understanding, how can I facilitate safety as someone who is not necessarily a member of that group, but how can I facilitate safety? And it starts by educating myself and then advocating for those around me so that I can try to get to something that is close to psychological safety for somebody that doesn't look like me, right? When we are the narrative that is established in this particular community, no matter what community you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I think of is this idea of not everything needs to be for everyone, which sometimes is a point that gets missed in the DEI kind of discussion because we get focused on equality, right? But some communities and some mindsets and some things are really for those people, for the lack of a better word, like thinking like having to be on all the time. You need to have people that you can be off around, right? Whether that is someone who is the same religion of you, the same gender identity as you, the same color as you, whatever, however you want to do it, right? Maybe it's just somebody who has a huge diverse group, but it's a book club and you all like the same type of books. And this is your one place where you can show up as Jessi book nerd and not all the other things that you have to show up in the world, right? So it's like figuring out that you should have a complex number of identities, right? Like you are so many different things to so many different people in all these different contexts. And now I'm saying that with the white privileges as someone who looks like myself, I get to choose that, right? I don't always get somebody to look at me and says like, oh, I have to be like this because I present in this way, right? But if we are aware of those things and those bigger systems, we can try to dismantle them and figure out how can we create the closest thing to safety in this while we keep this end goal where everybody is able to access inclusivity across the spectrum.
So please call me. Let's have the conversation and let's have the dialogue. And if we get one person to do that, then you talk to somebody else who then gets the person to do that. And they talk to someone else like, and this is how we change the world, one
Yeah.
person at a time. And eventually will trickle out and people will be better people, right? Because they have to be.
Absolutely.
So I used to tell people that a nurse can change the world with a friend and a hemostat.
Ah,
And this is very much that vibe, right? Of like, if you can band together and face this unimaginable other, whatever it is, whatever word you want to attribute to it, right? Um, and get on the other side, like that's community in its sense, right? And like we talk about, big things like moral distress and secondary trauma, which are big, impactful, sometimes life-altering experiences for us as healthcare workers. But there's also a sense of community that can come out of that like shared navigation of a traumatic experience, even if it wasn't your traumatic experience, right? And I think that's kind of what Circle Time originated from, right? In this idea that we might not all like each other. We might not all pick each other, but we all picked this place and we're going to all navigate this place. So like, there's that, you know? And then I think in some ways, the rise of social media and the ability to sensationalize everything.
Yeah.
You can monetize and sensationalize anything. Changing diapers, picking socks, like the wildest of things, right? You can find people that make ridiculous money, way more than I do, doing it online, right? And in some ways, you're like, cool, I guess there's a market for that. I am not in that market, but somebody is, right?
Yeah.
But in other ways, you're like, right, but it's driving forward this, oh, you watch that guy? I like this guy and the way he sorts socks better. And you're like, but why do we have to be enemies? Why can't we just be the two sock people? I don't get it. But everything is just, everybody's at each other's throats because they've told us they want us at each other's throats, right? It's by design in this sense of like, if you're fighting each other, then you don't realize that I'm stealing your healthcare or all the other things,
Yeah. Yeah. You're
And I mean, and
absolutely right.
if we think about circle time too, right? And we take it back to the NICU since that's where we kind of all originated. If you stop and you think about, which nobody likes to think about these moments, but if you think about the first patient that you ever lost, or one of the most traumatic patients that you lost for whatever reason, the people that surround you and support you during that, you don't care if they're blue, purple, or green, right? You don't care that they, whatever. I'm not even going to name all the various things that we could be different about, but the various things, right? You just know that in that moment in time, they are standing there beside you saying, I am sorry, right? How can I help you? How can I help this family who, even though it's hard on us, this family, right? What can we do, right? The number of times that people are like, yo, go take a break. Go just take a breather. I'm gonna finish bathing the baby. I'm gonna help you get things together. Do you want me to walk down to the morgue with you, right? Like you don't think about anything else other than in that moment that is somebody who understands what I'm going through, right? We jokingly call it trauma bonding at the one site I work at. And it's like, that this is your person because you have been through one of the worst things in your life. I frequently had conversations with my husband and it's like these people that I work with have seen me at my best and at my worst. They have seen me when I am hangry, when I am sleep deprived, when I am emotional. They have seen me when I am thrilled because I just got this procedure that I hadn't been able to get in years, right? Like they see you at your best and your worst, and you spend a lot of time with them. So you do become more attached to them. And I've always asked him, I've always been interested. Do other professions do that? Right? Like, do they have people like that at their job, or is it just us in nursing and in healthcare? Right? It's like, do you have people at your job that you're like, oh, you're my person, or is it just us? And I was like, I don't know, because this is all I've ever done with my life.
I've always joked, I was like, I guess accountants do this. I don't know. Like, but it is like a very shared experience across all of healthcare. I don't know. Like,
I need
because
somebody to tell me now.
somebody out there is going to be like, well, actually, then we'll learn something, right? Because I do think it is a shared humanity, right? That you're tapping into of like, this isn't even our loss, but we're impacted by it. So how are we going to get through this? I remember I had a situation with a patient, where the baby did pass, and I was helping. The mom had just taken a break. She had been there all morning, and she just needed a nap. And I was like, go ahead, I will be here with her. She is safe. She is with me, right? She did not want to participate in the bath. So she asked me if I could bathe her. And I said, okay, I can do that. And she was like, okay, I'm going to go check. And I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten all day. I had been there all day with this baby. And my coworker came in, she pulled the curtain and she spoon fed me food while we bathed this baby. And like it would have made everybody at the Joint Commission the most mad, right? But I was like, I am a human who is showing up for another human right now. And the only way I can continue to do that is if another human shows up for me, right? And it just is not the best exemplar of it, but it was just this moment of everyone's needs were being met because of this patchwork quilt that we had built for everybody.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the quilt because you were absolutely making me think about the quilt that I think a lot of the times, we're only focused on the little square that is us. But because we go through those really challenging situations where, the quilt is getting stretched, you start to notice, oh my gosh, there's another square next to me. It's not just this one patch, that the quilt is made up of all of these other folks. We're all in this together. And you used my favorite expression. It's really a celebration of our shared humanity, whether it's joyful or sorrowful, tragic or triumphant. To have those, they feel sacred, to be honest with you. I mean, they feel like they're sacred moments when we realize, oh my gosh, I forgot I was part of this quilt, and how wonderful that makes me feel because I can get through this through the support of all of these other squares, just to kind of keep the metaphor going and stuff. And those are the moments that I think, we can we can tap into those moments and continuously remind ourselves of those moments when we work in healthy environments, right, in professional practice milieus that see all of the different moving parts and aren't just, 100% focused on, the me or, what is it, us and them and that kind of binary mentality. But again, it's hard. And some days I think folks are acing it, and other times folks are really struggling to even see the seams. So,
It's it's like finding those glimmers, right? Like
yes.
people that have extensive traumatic experiences, like the ones that everybody would just be like, oh, go, there's still joy at some times. There's these moments, even if it's absurd or like you can't explain it. There's moments of glimmer, even in the context of trauma, right? And I think about that sometimes with the relationships that we're able to make or cultivate in between healthcare providers, and realizing that we are having this shared secondary traumatic experience, but also I know that you know that and I know that, and we're still going to try to do something to come out of it. We joke about having dark senses of humor and, all of that kind of stuff because we do, right? But all of that is born out of this need to bring some levity to some of the worst moments of people's lives that we just get to document. You know what I mean? Like, not only do I have to watch it, but I have to figure out how to turn it into a legal document. And so when really you just want to look at somebody and be like, this is terrible, you
Mm.
know? And so being able to have those moments where you can pop off some of that intensity of the trauma in an appropriate way, right? Like, this is not, doing TikToks at the nurse's station about things you shouldn't be, right? But it's like finding those moments of reprieve amongst the struggle to realize that we're all going to go down with the ship if we can't figure out a way to sustain the change forward. And so attaching and keeping track of those glimmers is one way that I think is a way that we can keep this movement going rather than only focusing on the enormity of it or even just the reward nature of it. Well, it's so rewarding to do it. Yeah, but also sometimes I just really want to eat a cookie. Like, I just really want to eat it. Somebody brought it in from home. She makes the best cookies, and I just really want one. And then I'll come back and do all the scary, crazy things. I promise I will do them all. But I just need like 58 seconds to eat this cookie. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it sounds like a really simple answer, but I think sometimes we overcomplicate these solutions. And having a bunch of simple answers to me is better than having one really complex one. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Timeless Topics. We welcome your feedback and suggestions, so please reach out. Our handle on all social media platforms is @TimelessTopicsNICU, and our email address is timelesstopicsnicu@gmail.com. See you next time.